What's up, guys? It's Rashaad with Bad Beat CCG here, and I'm bringing you the Mechi Kabura deck profile that I used to win my locals this weekend. I've been waiting on this leader to come out for a super long time, ever since we started the Unison Warrior series, because I just love this guy as a character. So we'll get on with the leader. What the leader does is, once per turn, when he attacks, you get to look in your life or deck for 2 of the Dragon Balls. We should play the Dark Dragon Balls in this deck. And his awakens, obviously when you have all 7 Dragon Balls in the drop, you untap 1, draw 1, flip them over, and your opponent warps a battle card from their drop if they have one. And on his backside, what he does is, his auto, when he attacks, he draws a card, and then your activate main once per turn, you take a card from your hand, put it on the bottom of the deck, and you either negate one of your opponent's battle card skills as 4 or less, switch it to active mode, and take control of it. Negate the skills for the game, or you remove your 7 Dragon Balls, and your leader gets triple attack, and then his draw isn't once per turn, so that basically be 3 draws a turn with that skill. And so that's the leader. It's really simple. It doesn't have a whole bunch. One thing to note, it doesn't have the free wish skill that all the other wish leaders have, so there's no desire cards in this deck. And then we'll get on with the deck and what we played. So obviously you gotta play your 7 balls. So I played 4 of the Dark Empire Strikes Back because it's a draw. Basically it's just a cycle. So what this one does is, if your leader card's Mechi, you reduce the energy cost of this card by 1. So it's a 1-drop instead of a 0 cost instead of a 1-drop. So it's free. You discard another Dragon Ball or a Demon Realm Raise, Demon God, or Evil Wizard from your hand along with this card, and you draw 2. So it just cycles. It doesn't really plus you anything unless you search them off your leader. Then of course you get your +2 for searching 2 cards. This one, activate main. Your opponent warps a 1-drop from their board, or activate battle, gets on 5k combo power. So it's not the greatest. I did use this activate main a couple times to remove a Black Mass Sand off the board, but 9 times out of 10 you're pitching it off this Dragon Ball to draw. And then onto the core of the deck. I only played 2 copies of the Unison because I play a little bit of a different deck. Mine's not as streamlined as most of the other ones. So what this Unison does is, once per turn, he has activate main where he just gives himself a marker, and then your -1, you place up to 2 Dark Dragon Balls from your deck in the drop, shuffle your deck and draw a card. So even if you don't have any Dragon Balls left, you can still do this to draw a card. You have to just shuffle your deck first and draw a card. So that's a 15k Unison that you can play on turn 1. It also does have the Rejuvenate skill if you manage to draw both of them and put 1 under it and keep it alive. But it's pretty hard to get this guy to 4 markers because you're going to be wanting to -1 all the time to draw, because it's just a free draw if your opponent doesn't kill it. And then on to the Ritual at Hand cards we play in the deck. If I had a 4th Toa, I definitely would have played it. So I play for Salsa. What Salsa does is, if you have 2 Dark Dragon Balls in your drop for 1 black energy, you get to play him from your hand, and when he's played, your opponent warps a card from their hand and draws a card. Well, this is important for filling up your opponent's warp for some of the other cards. And then when he attacks, your opponent warps a battle card from the drop, and then you draw a card. Even if they don't have a battle card in the drop to warp, you still draw a card. So this is really good. That auto is a hard once per turn though, so you can't have multiples out and keep drawing off of them. You only get that draw 1 time. But that's why this guy's good. He's once per turn, he just 15k swing and draw a card. So you're getting advantage and then taking advantage from your opponent. Toa's really good. She has the same activate main to play her for 1 if you've got 2 of the Dark Dragon Balls in the drop. And when she's played, your opponent warps a card from their hand and draws a card, but then she warps any battle card on your opponent's board. Doesn't have an energy cost restriction, obviously it just can't have barrier. So the Toa is really good, and if I had 1 more, I definitely would have played 1 more. And then these cards, I honestly just wouldn't play, but as you'll see, I only have 1 Con Negate, and these would definitely be Con Negates if I had the other 2. So what Sauce Shroom does is the same activate main, play him for 1, and when he attacks, you warp a battle card from your opponent's drop, and then you get to warp 1 of your opponent's battle cards that has an energy cost of 3 or less. He doesn't have that on play warp 1, draw 1 ability, so this one's not that great. Maybe in certain matchups he's okay, but he's not the best one. And then the Mechi Kabura, 1-drop, when you play him, draw a card, so it just replaces himself. And then activate main for 1 black, you get to look at the top 7, and you get to play any of these Ritual at Hand guys off the top of your deck. If you hit one, and then you can activate manual copies of this card for the turn. So that's what this guy does. And then one of the better cards in the deck is the King Vegeta SR. So what this guy does is, if your opponent has 3 or more cards in their warp, you get to play this for 2 black energy, which is why the other Ritual at Hand cards are good, because they fill up your opponent's warp to where you can reliably play this guy on turn 2. If you want to, you can, depending on the matchup, you don't always want to just slam him down turn 2. But when he's played, you get to warp a card from your opponent's hand or one of their battle cards off the board. You randomly pick yourself from the hand, so that's better than them getting to choose. And then, while he's in rest mode, if your opponent attacks your leader card once per turn, they have to warp a card from their hand. And then he's got Unique, Double Strike, and Barrier. So he's kind of hard to remove. He is only 19k, so they will swing at him a lot, and it's kind of hard to defend him sometimes, which is kind of where the Toa comes in hand if you were able to drop her, because she is a blocker also. So if you want to keep this guy alive, you know, you can just block with the Toa, combo stuff out. It don't matter, you know. He's good. Like, once he's done his job, he's pretty much done his job. And then I play an older engine in my deck, and it's performed extremely great for me today. So I play the Mechi Kabura, the King Summon, the SR from set 12. What this card does is 2 energy. If your leader card's a Mechi Kabura card, you get to, well, it actually doesn't have to be a Mechi Kabura card. It just has to be a Demon Realm Race card. That's black. You get to pay 2, discard him from your hand, create a card from your life, and then you play 2 cards from your deck that energy costs of 2 or below that don't have Mechi Kabura in their name. So unfortunately you can't use this to cheat out the Mechi that gets to call a card and prohibit it from being played. But they have to be an evil, wizard, demon realm race, or a demon god card with different names, and they can't have Mechi Kabura in their name. So he plays 2 guys for 2 and he crit a life. What this also does is you can bounce a 2 or less skill list back to your hand to play him from your hand for 1 energy, and he's a 5-drop 20k. When he attacks, you warp a battle card from your opponent's drop. If they don't have any battle cards in the drop after that, or you get to play a 2-drop from your drop. So that's where this card is like really important. Is there some stuff you can do with this that's like insane. So that's all this guy does. And then the cards that you're going to play off the Mechi, I played 3 Shroom and 2 Chain Attack Gravy. So Shroom's just the vanilla card that you're going to be bouncing in your hand to play the salsa. That's the only reason the Shroom's in here. There's nothing special about him. You can also play the Shroom back with the salsa. Like, say you bounce him back to your hand, you swing with something else, combo the Shroom, or if you pitched a Shroom for one of your Dragon Balls at the beginning of the game and just already have one in there, you swing, do the salsa auto, revive the Shroom from the drop, and get another swing out of them that way. Excuse me. And then the Chain Attack Gravy is like extremely good in this deck. Now this card almost made me deck out. So what Gravy does is once per turn, if you've got both of them on the board, they both hit trigger. When you combo with the Evil Wizard, Demon Realm Race, or Demon God card on your turn, you draw a card. And then when he's removed by a skill from the battle area, you warp a battle card from your opponent's drop. So the second part is not important. This is the first part that's important of you getting to combo a card and draw a card, because that builds up, because the super combos in this deck just happen to fall into the category of this card. So what you can do is if you've got both of these on the board, which I did a lot in this tournament, because I would just revive. I'd have one early, I'd pitch it off the Dragon Ball, search the other one off the Mechi, I'd swing with this, revive the other one after I played one off the Mechi, and then I'll have 2 on board. And then your super combo turns into a draw 3 super combo. So that's why I really love this card, and I think it's really good in this deck. Then on to my game ender type cards that I play is going to be these guys. So we'll start off with the 8-drop Mechi. He's got Deflect and Double Strike. His auto, if your opponent's got his activated main, if your opponent has 4 or more cards in their warp, and your leader card's a Mechi Kabura card, then you get to play this guy for 4 energy. When he's played, you warp your opponent's board, then you choose 2 cards from your opponent's warp that are 7 or below, negate their skills for the game, and then play them on your board in active mode. So he's a 30k double strike, then he can get 2 more bodies out that are big. Getting you the Body Snatcher, if you have a card that you took from your opponent, you just sack that card off, play this guy. He's a 20k double strike. On your opponent's turn, he loses 10k, which is not important, because they normally just still don't swing at him for some reason. But yeah, he's just a free 20k double strike. This is 30k double strike. So these are like the harder hitting cards that you're going to probably be ending your games with if you're not just grinding the matches out. I actually barely ever play this card. I won most of my matches just like grinding them out, swinging them with 15k, just 15 here, 15 there. And that's how I won most of the games, but then you have these big bombshells that you can just drop that do a lot of damage to your opponent also. The Dark Mask King, if your opponent's got 4 more cards in their warp, you can play this guy from your hand for 4 energy. If your opponent has 10 or more cards in their warp, when he attacks, he unstands himself. So, and he warps 2 battle cards from their drop when he attacks. So if they have 8 in there with 2 battle cards in the drop, and you swing with him, warp 2 battle cards, that'll be the 10 requirement, and he'll untap. But he's a 25k triple strike. He's got deflect, but unfortunately, he has deflect but no barrier. So if you're playing against green and they have charismatic villain, they'll just pop it with charismatic villain. But if this card's attack is negated, once per turn you get the symbol on your opponent's life to the warp. And then I play the Shinron the Wish Granter, because combined with your leader ult, if you drop this guy, you get to give your leader triple strike, and then your leader ult gives him triple attack, so you have a triple strike, triple attack leader. That's going to draw you 3 cards. So that's the other way that you can end the game. If you don't want to play either of these 2 cards, you definitely don't have to. They're just like my preference of having an additional game ender in case I needed one. I didn't play either of these 2 cards at all today. So you can definitely cut these if you would like, but if you're going into longer, grindier games, these cards can come up for you. And then obviously I play the 1 Champa just in case you do your leader ult and don't have this, but you want to kind of pressure him. You can potentially go through like a Flying Nimbus and still kill your opponent if you have your leader ult. So we play the 1 Champa. And the super combo that I played is the Toa super combo, because she is an evil wizard card that you can use off the gravy. So that's like really good. And it's also Sparking 5, and 9 times out of 10 you're going to have Sparking 5 on your first turn. So if you're playing against like some heavy aggro and you couldn't get your Awaken on turn 1, then your super combos are live. Also, she is a 15k. You could, for some reason, if you wanted to, swing with it. But the important thing is she's also a 2-drop. So this also, when he attacks, if your opponent has no battle cards in the drop, can revive this Toa. And so you can revive the Toa and have her to combo with again. So that's the other reason that this is a super combo I went with instead of the Super Saiyan Vegeta super combo, because this one just has a lot more utility in this deck, where this is revivable to be reused again, and then it also procs on your gravy to draw you additional cards, so your super combos start turning into draw 2 or draw 3. I drew 3 off 1 super combo several times in the tournament today. And then to round out the deck, the negates that I play, 4 Putine. What she does is if your leader is a Mechi Kabura only card and you pay her 2 energy, play her from your hand, and then you place a card from your hand on the bottom of the deck, and then if your opponent attacks for the rest of the turn, they have to warp 2 cards. So it's a topo for Mechi Kabura. The 1 Kai, like I said, I would play 3 if I had 3, but I didn't have the other 2, and I'd cut the other 2 Ritual hand cards and play the Kai. What Kai does is, if your opponent has 3 cards in the warp, or you have 3 cards in the warp, then you can play her for 1 energy. She's a counterattack, so she negates. When you play her, you warp one of your opponent's battle cards off the board. They get it back at the end of the turn. So this is good because it stops 2 swings in 1. So if your opponent has a battle card on the board and they swing with their leader first to try to draw, because obviously most of the time they're going to swing with their leader first against this deck if you leave energy up, because they're going to want that draw in case you don't have a counter for Putine to stop her from hitting the board. They're going to swing leader first to draw. And so if you negate it with this, then you get to warp one of their other battle cards, so you can stop 2 swings in 1 with her. So I would definitely up this to 3 or 4. And then I only played 2 copies of Darkness Judgment. I barely ever negate it with this card. I really just use it for the activate battle because it lets your leader become a 20k leader on your opponent's turn. And so that kind of like makes it easier against any Weenie Rush decks that you might play against. It makes it easier to out-combo a lot of things. But that's the deck. I did check at the locals today. We only had 3 rounds because I was the only undefeated left after 3 rounds, so it cut there instead of us going to the 4th round. I beat all 3 of my opponents 2-0 with this deck, so this is definitely very strong, and I'm very comfortable with this build. I like this build a lot more than the streamlined normal one because there's a lot more control that you have to it. You have more options of doing things. You're not relying on stealing your opponent's battle cards to win games, which is like a big problem I have with the normal version of the deck. If your opponent wasn't playing battle cards that you could steal and swing with, then it was harder for you to win games that way. But with this version of the deck that I've came up with, you get to just swing with your own cards, and you're making a lot more swings without having to worry about that. And you don't have to worry about drawing any game ender style card, because you're probably ending the game before you even drop those cards, because you're swinging a whole bunch of swings, just taking cards from your opponent. So that's the deck. If you have any questions, comments, or anything, just feel free to let us know. But I thank you for your time, and we'll see you in the next one.